Hi, I'm Ruth Pierce. I'm the Relationship Maximizer because I help you take all your relationships to the next level. And that includes your relationship with yourself, which is one of the most important ones. And we are talking about The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey. This is a classic book that has been around for ages. And every time I pick it up, I learn several new nuggets that didn't really speak to me the time before. And so I encourage you to dive into this book as an audiobook, as a paperback, as a Kindle, whatever format fits your needs the best way that you learn. Today, we're going to be finishing up habit number 3. This is part 2 of habit number 3, and it is put the first things first. We had habit number 1, which was be proactive. We had habit number 2, which was begin with the end in mind. And then habit 3 is put first things first. If you want to talk about it as a programmer or computer programmer, habit 1, be proactive, recognizing that you are the programmer. Only you can program your life the way it should be. And if you let other people program it the way they want it to be, then you're not the programmer. And it may not end up the way you want it to. Habit 2, begin with end in mind, is where you write the program. You create the blueprint. This is what I want my life to look like. These are the principles I want to live by. These are the values I want to live by. This is a character I want to have. And then habit 3 is put first things first. So once you've done habit 1 and habit 2, then you start running your program or living your program, living your life the way habit 1 and habit 2 encouraged you to do. You're running the program, you're living it. Now, this is review from the first part of this thing that we covered last time, and that is think of it as 4 quadrants. And in your 4 quadrants, in the first quadrant on the left, Zoom always goes backwards. On the left are the things that are urgent and important. It's the things that, yes, you have to do, and you have to do them now. I think of the washing machine running over water, and there's water all over your floor. Can you ignore that? No, not unless you want to destroy your floor of your house and all kinds of things. You have to take care of it. And then on the other side is quadrant 2. On the right, upper right is quadrant 2. That's the things that are important, but not urgent. This is where you can be most effective, but it doesn't always get done because it's not urgent and other things take over for you. And quadrant 3, the lower left, is the things that are urgent but not important. Those a lot of times are other people's agendas. It's the disruptions that happens throughout your day that keeps you from being focused. And then in the bottom right is quadrant 4, which is not important and not urgent. Those are our time wasters. And that's enough said about that one. So let's take a minute, though, and talk about that quadrant 2, because that's the one that we want to enlarge. I'm going to read you the list of what's included in that. And it's proactive work, important goals, creative thinking, planning and prevention, relationship building, learning and renewal, recreation. Now, our goal is to get quadrant 2 to enlarge, to get it bigger and bigger. And as we do that, when you first start doing that, the only place you're going to find the time is from quadrant 3 and quadrant 4. Both of those that are not important. That's where you're going to find the time and the energy. is getting those smaller. And then also, as you enlarge quadrant 2, quadrant 1 will get smaller too. But you're always going to have some things that fall in quadrant 1. You won't ever eliminate it entirely. But as you increase quadrant 2, you take care of things proactively, you won't have those urgent and important things come up quite as often. So those are things to keep in mind. Quadrant 2 is the heart of effective personal management. Yes, it applies to work too, but right now we're talking personal management. It deals with all the things we know we need to do, but somehow seldom get around to doing them because they are not urgent. I want to switch gears with you and talk about this is a subtopic in this book, and it says what it takes to say no. Because you are going to have to say no in order to enlarge your quadrant 2, in order to be proactive with what you want to happen in your life. You must be proactive to work on quadrant 2 because quadrant 1, the necessary, and quadrant 3, distractions, work on you. You have your choice. Do you want to work on it proactively, or do you want life to happen to you? To say yes to important Q2 priorities, you must say no to other activities. And sometimes apparently urgent things. You have to decide what are your highest priorities and then have the courage to say no in a pleasant, smiling, unapologetic way. The enemy of the best is often the good. The enemy of the best is often the good. That's true for a lot of us, isn't it? This is a question that Stephen Covey asked in the book. And it's, what of the 3 areas do you struggle with the most? Number 1, the inability to prioritize. Or number 2, the inability or desire to organize around those priorities. Or 3, the lack of discipline to execute around them. Most people think it's the discipline, number 3. However, Covey believes that the basic problem is that their priorities have not been deeply planted in their hearts and minds. They have not really internalized habit 2. They haven't created the program. They haven't created the blueprint of what they want their life to be. They recognize these activities are important and try to prioritize them through self-discipline alone. But without a principle center and a personal mission statement, they do not have the necessary foundation to keep those efforts going. And this goes back to those alternate centers. If you're centered on your spouse, your money, your friends, your pleasure, you will keep getting thrown back into quadrant 1, the necessary, and 3, the distractions, reacting to the outside forces your life is centered on. Even if you're centered on yourself, you'll end up in 1, the necessary, or 3, distraction, reacting to the impulse of the moment. Your independence alone cannot effectively discipline you against the center. Wow. This is why it's so important to create that mission, personal mission statement. Now, the content and the format's going to look different for each one of us, and that's okay. But get it down in writing who you want to become, what you want your life to look like. And this is from moving into quadrant 2. The first generation of time management, notes and checklists, we all been there, done that, does not even recognize the concept of priority. No priority, no value, or life purpose is attached to it. We simply respond to whatever penetrates our awareness and apparently the needs to be done. Second generation time managers assume a little more control. They plan and schedule in advance and generally are seen more responsible because they show up when they're supposed to. However, the activities they schedule have no priority or recognized correlation to deeper values and goals. And then the third generation, because each one builds on the others, don't they? They clarify the values and set goals. They plan each day and prioritize their activities. But the limitations of that third generation limits vision. Daily planning often misses important things that can only be seen from a larger perspective. The very language of daily planning focuses on the urgent, the now. While it prioritizes order to an activity, it does not look at the bigger picture of principles, personal mission, roles, and goals. It basically prioritizes Q1, quadrant 1, and quadrant 3, problems and crises of the day. It makes no provision for managing roles in a balanced way. It lacks realism, creating the tendency to overschedule the day. I've been there, done that. Have you? Resulting in frustration and the desire to throw it away and escape to quadrant 4, waste. This time management focus tends to strain relationships rather than build them. And that's not what we want, is it? Becoming a quadrant 2 self-manager. Quadrant 2 organizing involves 4 key activities. Number 1, you must identify your key roles. And by the way, I have a priority tree. I call it a decision tree for relationships. And I have prioritized my different relationships. There's like 1 is at this level, 2, and so on and so forth. And it helps because whenever there's a conflict between, do I do this or do I do this with this person or that person, I can go back to which relationship has more weight, which one is more important. Number 2, selecting goals. And when you do organize by quadrant 2, you think of 1 or 2 important results you feel you should accomplish in each role for the next 7 days. At least some of these goals should reflect quadrant 2 activities, and some tied to the longer-term goals in your personal mission statement. 3, scheduling. Look at your week ahead and schedule the time to activate them. Translate each goal to a specific day of the week, either as a priority item or specific appointment. 4, daily adapting. With quadrant 2 weekly organizing, daily planning becomes more of a function of daily adapting, of prioritizing activities and responding to unanticipated events, relationships, an experience in a way, meaningful way. And you may still desire to prioritize each day, 1, 2, 3, and so on and so forth. The next section is called living it. Remember, putting first things first is all about running your program, living it. Living it is primarily using our independent will, self-discipline, integrity, and commitment, not to short-term goals and schedules or to the impulse of the moment, but to correct principles and our deepest values, which give meaning and context to our goals, schedules, and lives. You cannot shortchange people. You cannot think of efficiency with people. You think effectiveness with people and efficiency with things. Effectiveness with people and efficiency with things. If you have habit 2, write the program. Deep inside your heart and mind, you have those higher values driving you. You can modify your schedule to those values with integrity. You can adapt. You can be flexible. You don't feel guilty when you don't meet your schedule or when you have to change it. And not having that guilt is so important. And this is where the third generation struggled, because they had it that if you set a goal, you were a failure if you didn't reach it. Quadrant 2 organization allows you that flexibility because you're basing it on your values, on your principles that are important to you. In fact, that's what this next thing says. I'm in the subtopic, advances of the fourth generation. The fourth generation recognizes that people are more important than things. And we don't remember that, then we get ourselves in trouble. It also recognizes that the first person you need to consider in terms of effectiveness over efficiency is yourself. That goes back to how important it is to love and value yourself. It encourages you to spend time in quadrant 2, to understand and center your life on principles, to give clear expression to the purposes and values you want to direct your daily decisions. It helps you create balance in your life. It helps you to rise above the limitations of daily planning and plan your week. When a higher value conflicts with what you had planned, it empowers you to adapt and not stick to a rigid schedule. Instead of using a roadmap, you are using a compass. Delegation, increasing P and PC. We accomplish all we do through delegation, either to time because we're doing it ourselves or to other people. If we delegate to time, we think efficiency. If we delegate to other people, we should think effectiveness. There are basically 2 types of delegation: gopher delegation and stewardship delegation. Gopher, exactly what it says. Go for this, do this, and tell me when it's done. Stewardship is focused on results instead of on methods. It gives people a choice of method and makes them responsible for results. Stewardship delegation involves clear, upfront, mutual understanding and commitment in 5 key areas. Number 1, desired results. Clear, Mutual understanding of what needs to be accomplished, focusing on what, not how. Results, not methods. 2, guidelines. Identify the parameters within which the individual should operate. And number 3, resources. Identify the human, financial, technical, or organizational resources a person can use to get the desired results. 4, accountability. Set up the standards of performance that will be used in the evaluation, including results and times for reporting and evaluating. Number 5, the very last one. Consequences. Specify what will happen, both good and bad, as a result of the evaluation. So number 1 was desired results. Number 2, guidelines. Number 3, resources. 4, accountability. And 5, consequences. I love this story that Stephen Covey tells about his 7-year-old son and the lawn and taking care of the lawn, and it's worth your time to read or listen to. But the things that came in, well, let me just recap that story real quickly for you. The family was dividing up the different tasks that they could do within the family. And this son, 7 years old at the time, it's his son, Stephen, who now is a grown man and writing his own books, for those that you know that story, decided that he would be responsible for the yard. So he and his dad went out and they talked about what needed to be done and who could help. And he told his son, he said, "You can ask me to help you. I will be your helper," that human resource. And they talked about what would be the result they required. And it was clean and green. And it took a little while for this 7-year-old boy to get a handle on and feel like he could do it. In fact, one of the first times he did ask his dad for help. There was a mess in the yard from a barbecue, and he says, "I just can't pick it up." And the dad said, "Do you want me to ask me to help?" And he said, "Yes." And so the dad did, helped him clean that up. And as the summer went on, that 7-year-old took responsibility and ownership of keeping that yard clean and green. Now let's talk a little bit more about, because that's an example of stewardship delegation. But let's talk a little bit more. I've got some bullet points for you on this one. Stewardship means a job with trust. I trust you to do the job, to get it done. We always feel good when somebody trusts us. But you can think of an example in your life where somebody in authority did not trust you, and it was hard, wasn't it? You are the boss, not me. Trust is the highest form of human motivation. It brings out the best in people. If stewardship delegation is done correctly, both parties will benefit and much more work will get done in much less time. The focus is on effectiveness, not efficiency. The steward becomes his own boss, governed by a conscience that contains the commitment to agreed upon desired results. With immature people, you specify fewer desired results and more guidelines, identify more resources, conduct more frequent accountability interviews, and apply more immediate consequences. With more mature people, pretty much the exact opposite is there. You have more challenging desired results, fewer guidelines, less frequent accountability, and less measurable, but more discernible criteria. And I love this very last thing that I'm going to say. The Q2 or the quadrant 2 paradigm empowers you to see through the lens of importance rather than urgency. It allows you to see through the lens of importance rather than urgency. And with that, we finish up habit 2. And that is put first things first.